surfacer. This is considered to be, if I remember correctly, a 12-inch surfacer. So we'll take a 12-inch wide board and be able to make that cut for us, okay? So anyway, what we're here today to do is number one, check out the PowerPoint that Matt has done here for us. And along with the PowerPoint and then this video on the tool safety will hopefully allow us to be able to operate this machine safely. Okay? So again, that's what we're working after. Alright, now, one of the nice things I just want to point out before we get started here that I've actually done on this machine, because this machine, we can potentially damage it. It's not a machine so much that needs a whole lot of safety required with it, but it is a machine that can be damaged fairly easy. So what I did was, in case I forget to point it out, is I put, we taped some directions actually right on the machine. Okay, and what it does is, yeah, you can zoom in on that there. What the directions state is it states how big of a cut, mainly is what it does. It states how big of a cut we can make with this surfacer. And that actually, before we get started here, is 1/4 of an inch at a time. Okay, or excuse me, 1/4 of an inch. 1/4 of a turn of the hand wheel, which ends up being about a 1/16 of an inch at a time. Okay, and that's going to keep our blades nice in this machine and give us a nice finish. All right, so the planer. Here we have a picture of the planer. Let's see. The diagram of the parts. Again, fairly simple. Okay, and Matthew here is going to point out the parts for us of the machine. And we're going to start right at the very top. So at the very top we have our motor. So go ahead and point out the motor there. There we go. Okay, so we have a motor. The motor does run off of belts, so we'll come around the other side. All right, underneath the shield here on the left-hand side, actually as I'm facing it, the left-hand side here, there is some belts in that housing. So point to the housing there on the side. This housing here. So there's some belts in there that go down the cutter head, and that's what actually runs the machine. Out in front of the motor, come out in front of the motor, there's our start-stop switch. Okay, so it's nice and big, easy for us to see. Allows us to be able to start and stop that machine with no problem. Okay, to the right of that is our hand wheel. Okay, and that's our raising and lowering hand wheel. So you can go ahead and give that a turn. You see that how that's happening? Okay, lower and then the other way. Okay, so righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. There we go. Up and down. Simple enough. Good. All right. The depth we can make here is approximately about 8 inches. So we could run an 8-inch thick board through there. Typically, will we have that? Not necessarily. Okay, I have yet to plane a board that thick, but we can if we have to. We have the capacity. All right. The piece that attaches the motor, or the motor's attached to, is the head unit. So go ahead and point to the head unit there. So that whole piece there, nice big head unit, has the cutter heads inside of it. Okay, and has a 3-blade cutter head. So again, that's actually the most dangerous piece of the machine, and we want to make sure we have the most respect for that part. Okay. Below that's our table. Yep. So that's actually our in-feed table, and to the back there's a nice roller-style out-feed table. All right, and in the very center is the actual steel table. Right here. Yep, there you go. That's the steel table of the whole machine. Okay, that has a roller in the center to help keep the board to keep going through the machine. All right, so our table, and then below that we have our pedestal that keeps the machine up in the air. Okay, now on the very far right side, so I'm going to bring the camera on this side. On the far very right side, go up a little bit closer. There we go. Okay, now you want to point to it. There's our speed selector. Go ahead and point to it. Yep, and there's a knob there below it, right there. Okay, and what it does is it takes us between 16 feet per minute and 30 feet per minute. Okay, and that's the rate of speed of the feed of the board going through the machine. Okay, so there's some rollers in there that spin on some gears and a chain, and they spin, and obviously you can go in between different feet per minute going through the machine. We typically want to go on the 16 feet per minute, and to have it at that is, you see there on the label, point to the label where it says push out. Okay, that's right down here at the bottom. Push out, push in. Actually, it should say pull out, right? But it says push out. We just want to make sure this lever is pulled out. Okay, and that'll keep us at 16 feet per minute. We want to go slow, but this slow gives us a better finish to the board after when it's planing. Okay? All right, bring the camera back around. And that's the parts of the machine. this, Matthew's going to stand right in front. Okay, there we go. He's going to bend down on his knees right here in front. He's going to bend down on his knees. Okay, we're going to pretend there's a board stuck in there. Bend down on his knees, he's going to look into the planer. Okay, that is not safe. Alright, so he's going to make sure he definitely doesn't do that at any given point in time. Alright, if a board gets stuck, what he does is he hits the stop switch, waits for it to come to complete stop. Yep, and then we raise the head, okay, and he'll pull the board out. Never ever look into the machine. What can happen is if he's bent down like that looking in, a piece of wood can come flying out to catch him in the head, and we definitely don't want that to happen. Alright, so never look into it. Always use eye protection. Obviously we're going to do that. We have them on, so we're good to go there. Alright, good pictures of eye protection. Safety. Adjust the machine to the correct thickness of the cut before turning on the power. Okay, now, to do that, there's a couple of different ways. Okay, out in front of the machine, so come up closer with the camera. Right in front of the hand wheel, there's a measuring device. Okay, yep, see the measuring device there? Okay, so we can go by that measuring device, and there's a little red indicator there that kind of shows us what measurement we're at. Okay, so what Matthew would do is he'd take his board, so go ahead and grab the board, hold the board. Okay, and then he'd take a tape measure, and we'd measure the thickness of the board. Okay, so we measure this thickness right here. And then we'd go to that little gauge there, and we'd set the little gauge at the thickness of the board. Alright, so we'll definitely do that to begin with. Alright, we'll do that here in just a little bit. We may not get to it today, we may have to do it next time, but we'll do that here in just a little bit. So we'll measure the thickness, and then we'll set this to the correct thickness that the tape measure tells us. Alright, then once we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to take the board, we're going to slide it in there, and we're going to make sure that it's not too tight with the rollers. If it's too tight with the rollers, it's not the correct height. If it seems like it's just fine, then we'll go ahead and we'll run the machine and send it through. Alright, so we double check our thickness. Never plane more than 1/8 of an inch of the wood at a time. Okay, and that's that quarter of a turn we talked about at the very beginning of the safety. So we take a quarter turn of this hand wheel, so a quarter turn. Yep, okay, that's our 1/8 of an inch thickness. Right? And of course we'll take a quarter of a turn up or down. We take a quarter of a turn down, right? Because the cutter heads are in this head unit, so we take a quarter of an inch down. Quarter of a turn down. Right? Now, with a quarter of a turn down, we send the board through the planer. Which side of our board is being planed? Top or bottom surface? Top surface, because our cutter heads are in this unit, so the top surface. Alright, when we plane, we want to plane both sides of the board, right? So we plane one side, then how do we get the other side? Okay. Just turn it over and send it through again, right? Quarter turn, send it through. Perfect. So 1/8 of an inch at a time. Stock should be at least 12 inches long. If you're not sure, contact the teacher, which would be me. So 12 inches long. Alright, I think with the joiner we actually said 11 inches, because technically this should be able to have the capacity to handle only an 11-inch long board. Okay, so just for safety purposes, we'll say 12 inches, but in all technical aspects, we can do 11 inches. Okay, same way with the joiner. Okay. Plane with the grain, never attempt to plane across the grain. Alright, so come on in with the camera. Hold the board. Okay, so here we see lines in the board, right? Hopefully the camera can see that. Okay, and they all run either up or down. Alright, we want to plane wherever the grains run off the board. So you see this one runs off here. This one runs off this direction. We actually have these boards so they're set right, so they won't warp against each other. But since the majority run off this direction, alright, we want to send the board whichever direction the grain is running off, we want to send it that way into the machine. Okay? Alright. Service only new dry lumber, not obviously wet lumber with big knots in it. This knot here, okay, come closer. This knot here is pushing our limits. We can actually do this though, because if we look, maybe the camera shows it or not, but there is a hole through it, which means the loose part actually came out of the knot, so it should be safe to send through. Alright? If there's any loose spots in the knot, we definitely don't want to send it, but this one here is pushing our limits. Okay? Alright. Stand to one side of the machine when it is being fed through, okay? So come in front, Matthew. When he is, all right, surfacing this board, pretend he's standing right behind the table. There we go. All right, we see the slight issue. If that is deciding to obviously grab the board and send it out, right? Okay, it's right at that height where we definitely don't want it to be kicking out of the machine. Okay, so when Matthew surfaces the board, he's going to stand to the side. Okay, there we go, and he's going to send that board through. All right, this brings up another good point. I don't know if he has it in here. We may run across it again. But when he sends this through, if he has the board up at an angle like this, and it goes in here, okay, as soon as it hits the first front roller, what that roller is going to do is it's going to slam the board down to the table. Okay, and you want to make sure you don't have your fingers underneath at that time. All right, so always hold it on the sides, not underneath. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Do not look into the throw of the planer. We talked about that already. Handle and hold the stock only in the area beyond the ends of the table. So, as I said, this board is too short. We can't necessarily hold on to it at the end of the table like this, but we can make sure we only hold on to the side. Okay, so as I said, he probably has it in here. If the machine is not working or sounding proper, shut it off and then raise the cutter head, pull the board out, right? And then talk to me, the instructor. If need be, an operator can work with a partner to help the process go faster, okay? So what Matthew will do is he'll be here sending the board through. Me as the partner or helper will stand back here. He'll send it through. I'll grab the board. I may have to help it come through, right? It's a possibility. I can hand it right back to him. He'll take a what? Quarter of a turn. And he'll send it back through. Making sure he flips over the board, right? Okay. And we'll just continue until our surface is plain. All right? Good. Okay. And of course he puts safety first at the end. Excellent. All right. Okay, now, a couple of things that weren't covered here is the stock or the piece of lumber. What we don't want to do is we don't want to force it through the machine. Okay, if for some odd reason it's not going into the machine fairly easy, I mean you can help kind of push it through. Okay, but if it's not going through fairly easy where you really have to force it, that means something's not quite right. And you need to shut the machine off, readjust it, and go from there. Okay? Let's see. Speed. I think we talked about everything pretty much, right? Okay, so you just don't want to force the machine. Alright, so I think at this point what we can do is we can go ahead here and we can grab a tape measure. We'll measure the board, we'll set to the height. What time are we out here? About 5 minutes, okay. So we'll set the machine up here and then we'll come back tomorrow and we'll actually run the board through. Alright, tape measure, thank you. Okay, so come on in here. Guys come up a little bit closer so you can see what's going on. Okay, so we're just going to measure the board. Okay, now you can start at 1 if you want, but I'm going to go here over to 2. Alright, we see here we're about 3/4 of an inch thick, right? Okay, so we're 3/4 of an inch thick. So Matthew's going to he's going to lower. Looks like we definitely need to lower, right? Here we're at 4 inches, right? So I'm going to keep going down. There you're at 3 inches thick, right? Keep going. Okay, they were at 2 inches thick. Okay, they were at 1 inch. All right, you want to go to that bigger marking like they show here up by the 2 inches, right? And right about there. Okay. Now what we want to do at this point is there's another little hand wheel here on the side. You want to tighten that righty-tighty, other way. There you go. Okay, and that actually locks the mechanism up and down. There's also one on the other side, so you want to get that one there, Luke. Okay, we want to tighten both those. What that does is it keeps the head of the unit from wandering up and down as we're planing. Okay, now the part that's kind of a pain, and that's why you have a partner helping you, is you got to loosen these up every time you take 1/4 of a turn and then tighten them back down quick. Okay, it's a fairly fast process, but it does take a little bit of time. Yeah, and you only have to take like when you have this tight, you only have to take and turn it just that much, and you can raise and lower it, and then okay, so it's pretty fast. So you don't have to loosen them too far. Yep, just a little bit, raise it or lower it, tighten back down. Okay. All right, now what we want to do is take the board and we want to put it in here, and we want to see if it's going to grab that roller. You can see how it grabs that. Won't let it out. That's going to be just the right height to start. Okay. So what we want to do is loosen those two up. Okay. Yep. Wheel it up a little bit so you get the board out. Now wheel it back down to where you started. A little bit more. There you go. Lock them down. Okay. And we should be set. Okay. So tomorrow he'll send this board through. We'll turn the duct system on because this does give a lot of dust. So we'll have that noise, but at the same point, we want to get the dust out of here. Okay. The other ones I know we didn't demonstrate that way, but this one we want to. So we'll just deal with the noise a little bit. We'll send this through, and then we'll be done with the video and the safety. All right?